All right. Good day, everyone, and welcome back to another session with Humble Devs, where we'll be continuing to build our app, continuing from where we left off last week, um, where we were, of course, using the BMAT method to start and set up the foundation for our SaaS to get built, and yeah, so let's continue with that because there are still a number of things that we'll need to cover in terms of like having some slides and going through some information. However, I really want to switch from doing all of the information um, transfer through slides and explaining technical aspects of it and really continuing with building our application, because once we continue from the point of just building our local front end and back end, where we will actually need to connect our database, where we'll need to think about uh, having our application be deployed online, as well as setting up, for example, a domain, setting up the database and how this is connected, setting up all of the different aspects of getting our application actually functional and up and running in the cloud so that we can use it as well as other people, right? So starting today's session a bit later than usual, but that's okay. We'll continue. And throughout the next coming couple of weeks, I will also do additional streams. Some will be on Sunday and others will be during the week, a bit earlier in the day, just because there is going to be quite a lot to cover that just simply can't be covered in this stream specifically. So I'll be hosting these additional streams. I'll also be putting these in the Discord server as well, so that you guys can join these whenever you can. But just to provide some additional context, provide some additional information, and as you might or might not have seen, the AI world is rapidly developing. There is continuously new models that are being deployed, the new methodologies, new support tools to help you on your way, just like the one that we have been using since last week. And this space will keep on evolving. So as we're like going through this 12-week program, new things are coming up continuously, and whatever we're using now might be already outdated a month or two from this point, right? So, and having said that, I do want to touch on a subject that has now become quite well spread, which is an alternative to using the BMAT method. I mean, I wouldn't call it an alternative right away because it's still quite new. This has already been established for a number of months, and it has a decent amount of people contributing to it. So if we go back to the main page, as you can see, there are 66 contributors to the BMAT method in general. And when this came out, none of the AI agents or AI models currently that we use had a dedicated agent workflow. And that means that they didn't have agents with very specific tasks or criteria for their function, right? So you used to have just the AI model, just like we have in VS Code that we've been using already. And outside of just, saying that, okay, I want to use agent mode and I want to use a specific model, there wasn't really anything for you to specify. So you just ask it your question, it will build whatever it thinks should be built right now based on whatever prompt you've provided. But now there are alternatives that are popping up. So a lot of the AI models that we have, so including like ChatGPT, as well as Claude Code, as well as working with GitHub itself, with the GitHub Copilot, they're now introducing like agents up as a part of the standard development flow, so that you can already expect from them that, okay, you'll have an agent that will help you design your app, and then you'll have an agent that will help you to document your app. and all of these kind of things, right? So it is quite interesting. And having said that, we can look at actually. Mm, hold on, I'm just gonna switch to my other view. Okay, so if we go to, really doesn't matter where we are here. So we can look for, so if we're looking for like spec development in general, we will have now something that is new within the development of Copilot itself. So if we look at, yeah, I'm sure it's called Specky. Okay, I didn't think it would be that hard to find, to be very honest. Let's go to, let's just find VS Code. Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to find what it's called exactly. Okay. All right, so it's called Spec Kit. I don't know why I thought it was called Specky or something like that. But it's here. All right. So similar to what we've been using in the BMAT method workflow with the various agents, um, the GitHub Copilot spec kit itself is very similar, but simpler. So this could be a better fit if you're building a relatively simple application where the scope is quite limited in terms of functionality that you're expecting. Um, and this was actually updated, I think, yesterday or even earlier today, where it basically it has far less structure. I mean, I wouldn't call it structure, but it has a very um, simplified approach to building an app. So you have a constitution which is new. So you create your constitution, which is just basically the rule sets for your product build. So similar to the PRD that we're building, but this is more about setting rules regarding what you want, right? Your technology that you're using, all these kind of things. Again, very similar to what we're doing, right? And we're not going to pivot to use this, to be honest. We're just going to continue to using the BMAT method. But I just want to make you aware of the fact that alternatives are there. And this is very similar in the way that it just generates a whole bunch of MD files for you that can be referenced by the agent, right? And then you have specify where you kind of refine your like build more akin to the PRD that we're building. Then you have the plan phase where everything that is a part of your product build will be separated into different like epics and user stories to fully encapsulate all of the things that need to happen for each one to be considered like completed by the end of it. And then you have tasks, which will be just actionable items that an agent can actually like build or implement or validate. And then after the tasks, you kind of had to instruct the agent to like look into the task list and like start working on these, starting with the first one, and then continue from that point on. Now they've implemented an actual implement call where you can just tell the agent, okay, now this is your implementing phase. So it will then automatically go to the task list and like look at the tasks and implement them, check them off, validate, and then continue to the next one. Which is fine. So it's great to see alternatives. It's also great to see one being developed for like kind of GitHub specifically. Not that it is very important because you can use this like anywhere. It really doesn't matter. So okay, cool. Let's continue because it does cost quite a bit of time to go through our build. I also wanted to touch on the fact that currently we're doing everything using kind of the free tiers of whatever we have at our disposal, right? And I chose in the last episode to do everything in the IDE, so inside of VS Code, where I could have also started to build the PRD outside of it, right? So we have now currently we have the product brief, which is fine. However, we did spend quite a lot of our free tokens on here, right? So as you can see here, and this was like at 5% when we started last week. So by the end of it, we're now at 46%. So if you're going to do this and your application is anywhere near as complex as the one that I'm building, you might want to take the analyst agent or just follow the flow and like take the orchestrator and plug it into Gemini, for example, or prompt it to ChatGPT or Claude, and have it generate your PRD. So do all of the kind of analyst work, choose your technology stack, make whatever decisions are needed, and from that point on actually like let it create your PRD and then take the PRD and then like just place it inside of the docs folder, just call it prd.md, and to save yourself quite a lot of this how do you call it, the usage. in here. So this one will refresh, but again, this will only refresh after 10 days from now, which is quite a lot. So if I want to continue on building on this app and I want to actually like continue to build every single day, then doing this on the free tier is really not going to cut it for me. But that would be the same for any other model that you're going to be using anyway. So I just want to make you aware of that. So if you're like committed to building an app, either you build like the documentation first online using whatever free resources you have at your disposal. And then once you have the documents ready, you can then bring them over here and actually like start implementing instead of using all of your free tokens on creating your documentation. And then once the documentation is done, you're going to have to wait until you get more free use. And maybe to stretch it out a little bit more than just this, because you can of course use different applications, which I might do a bit later on. Because at the end of the day, we are utilizing the free like VS Code like resources. So if all of this is done, right, I can, theoretically speaking, just download Cursor or Windsurf or any other IDE that provides me with like some sort of free use, right? And just open the same project folder and choose an AI agent again, because all of them are inside of my project, right? So none of them are actually dependent on the IDE that I'm using, and just continue. So I might do that because I think I will be running out of tokens before the end of this video. So if we do, I'll download Cursor very quickly, sign up a new account just so that I don't have any utilization or anything like that, and just open up the same project folder and continue from there, right? So without further ado, let's get cracking, because I only have my brief at the moment. So I basically created a summary of everything. And if we go back to our guide, right? So this is what we were doing. We spoke to the analyst and we did a bit of brainstorming. But mostly, we gave it the description of the app that we wanted, the technology stack that we wanted to use, and it created the project brief, right? So we have that now. We're going to continue with creating the PRD, right? So this is the project manager's function, right? So we're going to switch to the project manager in our IDE. So before we're using the analyst, we're now going to switch to the PM, and we're going to tell the PM, hi there. Okay, so continuing with the PM function. So I'm going to tell the PM now. So again, right, we finished our project brief last week. Our product brief, we're now going to create our PRD, which is the product requirements document that will describe everything that is technically required to have our product functional. And I chose to use Gemini 2.5 Pro last week, which is fine. I'm just going to continue with using that. I don't see a reason to pivot away from it right now. It has been quite good, at least in my experience, with like the thought process and how it explains things and how to evaluate things. So for me, that's perfectly fine. Once we start actually coding this out, we might pivot to a newer model, just because they will have more experience and hopefully be able to build the technical part of it better. So we might switch to ChatGPT 5 mini, or maybe even 4.1. Not sure. We'll think about that by the time we get there. So hi there. I have created I'm just going to link it here on this hashtag brief with the help the list, and I would like to create the PRD based on the provided brief. All right, so this will kind of initiate the scripts for the PM. So the PM agent will start like going through its own documentation, right? Because if we look in here, we have profiles, right? So just like the profile we had for the analyst, so it has a persona, it has rules that are in there, kind of telling it what it's supposed to do, its description, its tasks, what it should be focusing on, how it should communicate with us. You can read through these. You can change any of these rules if you think that some of it maybe doesn't work the way that you want. You can change these. Also, it instructs it to read specific things. It also tells it where to create certain files and how these should be named. So if also you want to change the naming convention of any of the files that it creates, you can do that here as well. All right, cool. So, okay. So it's like, okay, hello, I'm John. Yes, great. He is our product manager. Okay, great. So it's like, okay, these are the things that you can do. So we can press 1 for help to show us the list of commands. Okay, so we can do some course correction, which is fine, but we don't need that at the moment. Create a brownfield epic or PRD. We already mentioned last time. So brownfield is for if you're adding this, if you're like doing this in an existing project. So you already have an existing code base, an existing project that already is functional, and you want to build upon it. And this is where you would like use the brownfield approach, but we're starting a new project, so we're going to just create a new one. So what we want is creating a PRD. So that's option number 7. So I'm just going to type 7. And I see you have a brief and want to create a PRD. That's exactly what the create PRD command is for. Yeah, indeed. This task uses a template to transform your project. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Okay, so I'm gonna press 7 and let it do its thing. Okay, so where? Oh, okay, so here was my response. Okay, so it's looking into the. Okay, so it's creating a document because it didn't find one. I have reviewed the brief, the document, the brief template. It will now begin creating the product requirements document for humble words by populating the first. Okay, so humble words, PRD, golden background. Okay, so it is quite important to go through these because the PRD is quite important for the success of the build that we're going to create, right? So let's go through it. Okay, so cultivate a small high engaging. Yeah, okay, so these are all of the goals that we set in the past episode where we had the brief, right? So these are like kind of the overarching goals that we have for our application in general. We have some context, which is fine. It's going to okay. This section, please review the initial section. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, proceed with the next. Refine goals. No, okay, we can proceed. That's all fine. So hopefully this should go quite a bit quicker than doing our brief, because during our brief we really had to answer a lot of questions, think about all of the different aspects of our app based on the analyst's question. Now everything is already kind of defined, so the product manager is going to take us more of a guided tour regarding how this work is going to be spliced up into different epics. So okay, the FRs are functional requirements, which it says right here. So every FR is a piece of functionality that our application needs in in order to be fully functional. So it's going through the brief and kind of combining certain functionalities together that make sense, so that these can then form the stories for us, right? So every functional requirement will most probably become its own epic, and then that epic will have tasks that will describe all of the different tasks that the agent will need to implement in order for the application to be fully functional. Now, a lot of it, not all of it, some of it will also be things that we will have to do, and it will point this out to us. So if we're like, we said what kind of database we want to use Supabase for it, as well as for the sign up. It will tell us at some point, okay, these are things that you will have to do. And if you want, I can provide you instructions for it, yada, yada. But it will split the things that the AI agent can do for you, versus all of the things that you have to do manually in order for you to be able to continue with the build. All right. So, okay, users must be able to sign up, create an account. Yes. Must be able to create and manage their profile. Sure. Authenticate. User have the main feed. Indeed. Follow and unfollow users. Sure. Okay, they need to be able to like and everything. Create and manage spaces. Users will be able to access the discovery page or like section. Yeah, okay. So this all sounds and looks very, very reasonable to me. Then we have the non-functional requirements. So everything that is, not a functional requirement for the build itself. So the architecture. So these are just requirements in general that are not part of the actual functionality, but this is more decisions that we've made. Uh, yeah, and this is exactly what we chose. A web application must be responsive. Great. Okay. Yeah, okay. I also need to add, okay. I'm building a social media platform, but I'm not selecting the best technologies to do so. There are technologies that will provide me more performance, more scalability, but at the moment, this is a project that I just want to build. I want to be able to publish it online. I want users to actually be able to use it. But I'm not thinking at the moment of like scale. I'm not thinking, in 5 months or 6 months from now, I'm going to have a million users on my app, and I need to make sure that our database and our server can actually handle all that load. This is something that currently I'm leaving out of the entire thinking process, because that's going to be requiring a very different approach. So I'm going to have to look very deliberately at the backend that I'm building, how I am going to host this, how I can shard all of my databases so that every single component, so that like the user accounts and the posts and the comments and everything are going to be housed in different databases altogether, so that the performance can be high. So all of that is currently not relevant, because again, this is going to be something very new. And it's not something that I'm building with the idea of like, okay, this is going to be the next $1 billion app. It could be, but this is at the moment not a criteria for deciding what technology we're using. Okay, this is great technology to use for any small to mid-tier SaaS. Okay, even if you're going to have thousands of users using your app every day, you're going to be perfectly fine. And if you're going to scale beyond that, then you will most probably have the knowledge and the funding and like the capability to rebuild the app completely for more performance. But at the moment, we're not going to deal with all of that added complexity, because we just want to build our app and be able to host it. All right. So continue within non-functional requirements. Yeah, it's all perfectly fine. It just echoes whatever we have in our brief, so there is nothing new here. It provides us with its rationale, which is a part of the how do you call it, the BMAD method. So this is the agents are scripted to provide us this kind of context for us to read. It's a kind of part of their persona as well. So we're going to continue with the next section. So the user interface design goals. Sure. Okay, so what do we have? Okay, so high-level vision for the user experience and guide the design and development process. Okay, so overall UX, there is experience for humble words should be calm, clear, and intentional. The design will prioritize readability, simplicity, and ease of use, creating a feeling of a respectful and focused digital space. That sounds quite good. Unlike mainstream platforms, yes, sure. So key interaction paradigm, deliberate consumption. Yeah, so feeds will be presented in a straightforward chronological manner. Interactions will be clear and direct. Simple tap to like, clear button to report will avoid addictive patterns like infinite scroll on the main feed to encourage meaningful usage. Yeah, that's exactly what we want. Structured navigation. Yeah, sounds fine. Feedback transparency. Yeah, okay, great. Core screens and views. So we have an onboarding flow, we have the main feed, we have a post creation, minimal composer writing to publish. Yeah, sure. User profile, space discovery, space feed, and admin moderation panel. So this might even like turn into its own app at some point. But yeah, we're not going to deal with that now. Just logging in as an admin and seeing an admin panel is going to be more than enough. Accessibility. So this is also quite important, right? So we didn't say anything about accessibility, but this is also built into the rule set of the agents and the BMAT method because I mean during the explanation of HTML and some JavaScript components, we spoke about accessibility, but also about specifically the correct semantics for HTML. So where we say that, okay, this is a header or this is a post or this is, a side panel or whatever, right? Um, Adding accessibility and following general accessibility guidelines is very, very important for any modern app because, you know, how do I put it? So if you want to post this app, for example, on an app store like the App Store or the Play Store, right? Or you just want users to use it. A lot of users who will be using accessibility features on their mobile phone, on their computer, in the browser, they would expect your app to work in a certain way, right? Because there are a lot of standards that have already been established. So not following any of these will leave these people um, quite with a bad experience when they launch your app because all of the things that they're expecting the accessibility features to do for them will simply not work because you have not provided any accessibility focus or design around your app, right? So it's great that this is just built in. You don't really have to think about it too much. It will just follow a specific guideline that is already established, and you can just let it do its thing. And if you're really wondering what is a part of it, you can just read it up, or you can ask AI to explain it to you in like a very simplified fashion. I would use that. I would do that online. I wouldn't do it here. So yeah, uh, you can look into this if you're interested. So we have a branding. Yeah, it's to be defined. We have not created anything. We have not given it a logo or like a color scheme or anything like that. Um, but okay, it's taking like some keywords that it's trying to use to create a color palette, which is quite interesting. So I'm really wondering what it will come up with because I'm just gonna let it create something. And if I really don't like it, I'll take some screenshots of things that I like and tell it to change it. But for now, we're just gonna let it create the design language for us. Okay. So yeah, devices and platform. Again, this needs to be responsive because we do want users that use a computer as well as users who use it on their mobile phone or tablet to be able to use our application in a proper fashion. Okay, the rationale looks good. Let's continue with the technical assumptions. So the technical assumptions will be guided by things that we have defined specifically inside our brief, as well as gaps in our definition that it thinks we need to make decisions. Okay, so we have technical assumptions. Uh, Okay, so it's a monorepo. Again, a monorepo just means that our front end, so the part of the application where the users interact with, and the backend, so everything that has to do with the logic, database, backend functionality, jobs that might run every now and then. These are both going to be in one project. So we're not going to build the front end separately and the backend separately and then connect these up through internal APIs. We're just going to create one big project where the front end and the backend are together, still connected through APIs, but in the same place, all managed in one single app. So yeah, the project is going to be using Next.js within a single repository. This structure is chosen for simplicity and speed, alignment with the solo developer, and 2-month MVP. Okay, sure. This setup will be intentional to evolve into a multi-package monorepo. Okay, so it can, sure. Again, this will depend on whether this app will get 1 million users or not. We'll see. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So indeed, we might pivot to changing the app altogether if we want to make it native for mobile users. So again, if we want to launch it, for example, on the App Store or the Play Store, we will need to change our like the language that we use. But we have abilities to transform these, so that's not really a problem. We have a serverless infrastructure. We have a serverless architecture. This is very important to understand. Um, and yeah, I want to think of a good analogy how to explain this very clearly. Um, okay, so let me put it like this. If we stick with the analogy of using cars to explain code and building a SaaS, serverless means that if you get in a car, right, and the car at the moment doesn't need to drive, it will be off, right? So you'll be sitting in the car is complete, right? So you're there, you're in the car, everything is around you. The car is like completed. You have furniture, you have the dashboard, everything works. But the moment that you press a button, right, nothing happens because the car is not on. It's not driving, right? So while you're there, so I'm explaining this from a point of a user. So your user is on your app, right, on your website, and just like the car, the app has already loaded. So the car has been built, right? It's complete. The user gets in, but when you click a button, you expect something to happen, right? But when you click a button in a car, that button is connecting to electronics within the car. We're assuming that if this is like a petrol-powered car, that the engine is running and that there is electricity for functionalities to actually, to work, right? So if we're saying that we're creating a serverless app, we're saying that okay, we're going to create this app. When the app is loaded, so when a user visits our app, it loads. And in order for that to load, the server needs to run. So it's like driving a car from the factory to the showroom, right? So in order for someone to see it in the showroom, the car has to be physically there, right? So you load the car from the factory to the showroom. It's in the showroom. The user can see it. They can get in. They can like see everything that is there. But with the serverless functionality, we can basically every time that someone is sitting in the car and presses a button to just go to navigation, for example, the application will call on a server function that will run only when needed, right? And this is what makes these services free to start with, right? Because if we wouldn't build it in a serverless way, we would need a server to be running 24/7 in order for any time that our customers visit our app in order for functionalities to be available to them, and for there to be logic in the backend that can run, right? So again, front end is what the user sees, and as long as the front end is loaded, that's fine. But when they click on any button or they do anything, so let's say they scroll, right? And they expect to see new information when they scroll. Um, we have already loaded the information that they're seeing, but we haven't loaded the information that they aren't seeing yet, right? So when they scroll, there needs to be some kind of functionality that tells the server, so the backend, I need now 10 more posts, for example, right? If we're thinking, okay, this is going to be a feed, we're going to put 50 posts in total, right? We're only going to load the first 10 when the user first loads the app. And if they scroll further, so let's say they scrolled past like the 5th post, we're going to load 10 more so that they still have 5 left to go. But when they reach the 10th one, the new content should already be there and they can like keep scrolling if they want, right? So in order for our app to get this additional information, there needs to be a trigger, right? And these are called serverless functions. So there is a function that we're going to build into our app that, based on actions from the user, or observations that we make inside of the app, we can then call upon various functions to the backend to deliver us more data or to update a certain piece of information, like a user clicking, for example, on the like button, right? We do want to register that like, right? So we're going to send that information to the server or to the database specifically. But if we want the front end to be updated, right? So we want the user to see that, okay, I've now liked this post. I expect to see, a like symbol changing in like color or like doing any kind of animation. And this can be fully front-ended, right? So in the front end, in the CSS, we can of course dictate that, okay, if someone clicks on this button, it will actually like animate, right? And update its color. But in the backend, if we didn't actually register it, to update the count of likes on a specific post in the database, then again, this has no point. And the other part is that when a user clicks like, the count can go up just in the front end. But again, what is the point of that? Because if the user then clicks like at 10 times, the like ratio of that post isn't not going to go up 10 times. So we want to show the number of likes that are stored in our database, not what the user only sees. So this is kind of I hope that the example made it clear. What is serverless? So we're building an app that is focusing mostly on the front end experience. Of course, we have the back end, but we're not counting on the fact that we have a server that's running 24/7. So we have to, at some point when we deploy this, actually before deploying this app, create functions within our server environment that will do specific tasks based on a trigger from our front end. And luckily, the platforms that we have chosen do allow us to do that to a limited extent, but it will be good enough for our use case. And to do all of this for like $0 is still amazing value to get you started, right? So architecture, sorry, maybe the explanation went on for a bit of time, but I thought it's very important for you to understand what serverless means in this instance, because we can shift to using a server that's up and running 24/7 later on, but for just getting our app up and running and like deployed, that is not necessary for the moment. Okay. So it says that it will do unit testing plus integration testing. So unit testing means that every component that gets built will be tested on its own for its own functionality. And then when it gets integrated into the app in total, it will be tested as a part of the app. So having these tests together will like make our app development quite robust. So that is definitely good enough. And then we have the balanced deployment. Okay, sure. Additional technical assumptions. Okay, so the framework is Next.js. App router is the chosen framework. Language is TypeScript, indeed, for type safety, which is quite important, like we discussed when we were speaking about JavaScript. Backend database. So Superbase will provide a database, which is Postgres. Will provide also authentication and storage. And it has row-level security, so it will we will set up rules that will dictate for each row of our tables or of our databases who is allowed to change these. So every user can change, for example, their name, can update their email address and other things, but they will of course not be able to do that for any other user. Yeah, execute security validation with Zod, possibly using Upstash for rate limiting, email using recent server state, query, recommend library. Okay, sure. So the assumption, yes, okay. So we're going to continue with our epic list. The pros and cons of the chosen stack. Yeah, okay. I mean, if you want, right? So if you're building your app and you don't know exactly how to continue or whether you've made the right choices or whether the AI model thinks that you should use something else, you could of course go a different route. I'm just going to continue with one because I've already I'm set regarding the stack that I want to use, so I just want to continue. Okay, so it's come up with okay, excellent. Epics are large bodies of work. Yeah, sure. Okay, so it has come up with two epics, which is less than I expected, to be honest, but okay, fine. So the first epic is foundation and course social experience. So it will create pretty much everything, establish the project technical foundation, and deliver the core social features. Okay, and then content creation. So the second epic will be regarding how people post and the interactions and whatnot. I've divided the MVP scope into two distinct sequences. Okay, that's fine. This two epic structure provides a clear, phased approach to building the MVP. So MVP stands for minimal viable product. So this will be like the starting point of our app that we think is good enough to deploy. It ensures the essential infrastructure is in place, differentiating features together. Okay. So, yeah, sure. Let's continue and see how it will fill out the first epic. Okay, so this will be quite a lengthy one, but we'll just skim through it very quickly. So, okay, the first epic we already understand. So we have the first user story, which is project initiation and Canary page. So it's providing basically the description for the AI developer to implement this, and it should basically provide it with whatever is required, right? So it's going to say, okay, your acceptance criteria. So how do we decide that this story is considered complete, right? So yeah, it needs to have installed Next.js, and there must be a project. It needs to be using these technologies. Have these configured. It needs to set up the Supabase client and set up environment variables to use locally, a simple public accessible page, which is great, um, and to push the repository to GitHub. This is quite important. I mean, it's very nice that it does that. So basically, it will force you to create a project on GitHub, connect them up, and that after every story, after everything's checked, and you can check it in yourself, you can then uh, commit it and push it, so that you have that basically stored, and it can do the next task. Because if the next task like breaks the build or like does something that is unexpected, you can simply just ignore or like delete everything that was created for that specific task and just rerun the task from scratch. And then because you still have your build saved, basically. Okay, so we'll be adding the user authentication. Sign page. Okay, sounds good. Um, yeah. So while reading this, I actually got an idea. Mm, okay, I mean this is fine, but the problem that I have with this, and it's not a problem, right? So we can continue with whatever it has provided here, but there are a couple of pain points that we will run into. Um, and one of them will be, for example, to use Supabase, for example. So if we're going to sure. So if you, I mean, you will need to sign up for a free account, so you can just say, okay, I'm new here. I'm going to start a new project. It will be free. You can have up to 2 projects running, and every project will have its own database and like storage and functionality and whatnot, which is fine, right? Um, you will spend a lot of time in the Supabase configuration, right? And there are it's fine because I think it's important for you to learn what needs to be done in configured in Supabase, because it will make it easier for you to manage your app once it's live. If you haven't done any of that and you really don't understand how Supabase works and how your databases are built in there and how they're managed and how the user accounts get registered and how authentication works and like running the jobs when a trigger is received, this can be quite daunting to do that once there is a problem in like if after you've already like published your app and people started to use it. Um, but on the other hand, you can use the MCP server as well. And I'm just thinking while reading that description for the epics, whether we should pivot and use the MCPs. I think we should, because it's going to be like much easier. And you can still, of course, just log into Supabase and see everything that was created for you, but then you don't have to kind of keep on going in there and checking all of the different pages manually and whatnot. And maybe it's a good point as ever to explain what MCP is. We already touched upon the model context protocol before, but it I guess it warrants a bit of explaining. Okay, So if we look at, okay, no, this is not really what we want. So if we look at, okay, I hope I can find a good image here to kind of explain. So how a normal API works, right? We already went through this. So you create API endpoints, or there are API endpoints already existing for you, right? Web API. So if we look at a web API and how it is structured, right? So I mean, yeah, this doesn't really explain it all that well, but the web API will basically um, you have to write all of the different functionalities that a user can call upon. So you have a browser, someone is using it. When it is received by server, depending on your API protocols that you have already created, there are certain things that a user can or can't do, right? Yeah, so this is maybe a bit better. So you have your get, post, delete, and put methods that we already spoke about before. But for each one, you define all of the different handling. So if you remember when we spoke about the paths that we will define in our application, so if a user goes to like the account page, right? We will have an API in our backend that will decide, okay, when a user goes to the account route, we will load various pieces of information, but we will check first uh, who is the user that is logged in. And we will also check that they have a valid session, that their session token is there. If not, we will just kick them out of that page. If they are authenticated, we know this is the user and we have that user in the database, we will get their information and populate the account page with their data, right? But all of this needs to be implemented manually, right? Which is fine. That is how it has worked, like since pretty much always, right? Now, if we go to MCP servers, this really changes the paradigm of how this works, because now we're using AI to do a lot of the coding on our behalf. MCPs have been established to make data requests and data delivery more dynamic. So instead of us going through the API documentation for Supabase, for example, and again, like the AI will do this on our behalf, so it will already check out the documentation and it will already be like, okay, I need to create a database, and the database needs to have a specific structure on Supabase, right? So it will look at, okay, how do I formulate my request? How do I how do I communicate to the API endpoint for Supabase that is responsible for the creation of the database? How do I tell it exactly what SQL script I want to run in order to create these and to set up the permission scheme and whatnot, right? MCP changes that. So it will just create one endpoint that the AI can talk to. So the AI will reach out to the Supabase MCP server, and the server will tell it everything that it needs to know, right? So it doesn't need to get that information from documentation, for example, and then formulate its request and send it, and hopefully that is correct and everything will work as expected. No, the MCP server will instruct it, okay, this is what you need to provide me if you want to create a your SQL database, right? So that the AI agent can deliver just that. So it shifts the ideology, kind of it changes it and makes it kind of the other way around of how it used to work, which is very beneficial, where we don't need to worry about whether our AI model that we're using now has the latest information. I built a project before where the API calls that the agent used were a bit outdated. So that created some problems while setting up the database, and I had to kind of go in there manually and fix it. Which was quite, I mean, it cost you a couple of hours to like troubleshoot through it and understand what went wrong and rerun all of the queries in order to recreate your tables in the proper fashion. But if we just add the MCP server to our, how do you call it? If we just add the MCP server to our configuration, we don't need to worry about that. So when the agent needs to set up Supabase, or even adding payment, or even adding authentication, right? It will talk to the MCP server. The MCP server will tell it everything that it needs to do, and then it can just do that. And it will always have the up-to-date information, right? So I think it's wise to include using MCPs, because if we don't, I think we'll be missing out on a lot of great functionality that has now become like very standardized for just communicating to any platform, basically. So let's do the following. I'm going to tell our product manager that we want to add the use of MCPs, right? So that it can add these to the tasks, so that the developer agent, when it does its work, that it will account for utilizing the MCPs, right? So I'm going to tell it, okay, I want to, what do we want to do? Discuss technical implementation of a story, add new user story, remove access. No. So we're going to tell it that we're going to okay, I'm going to go with 4 because I think this is the most relevant. For every platform implementation, I would like to include the use of the relevant MCP server of the target platform. Like this one for Supabase. So I'm just going to give it the URL of where this information can be found. And we're even going to take it a step further. Actually, we already did that. So last week, we already looked at context 7, right? So we had to look at context 7. Okay, maybe just go to the, whoops, did I write? Oh, okay. I wrote it wrong. Okay. So we already spoke about context 7. So this one already has all of the various APIs. So this is also, it has its own MCP server. And this combines everything together. So we can just use MCP 7 and that's it. And just tell it that, okay, just use MCP 7 to get all of the latest API calls. But we can also set up MCP servers for each individual platform. It really depends on what we want to do. We can use context 7 alone to just tell us all of the like latest APIs and like communication methods that we need to use, or we can tell it to use the various MCP servers. Context 7 will just give us, like, we just configure one MCP server, just context 7, and it will give us all of the information. Or we can configure all of the different MCP servers for every different platform. So for Supabase, as well as Vercel, as well as possibly AppStash or Resend and whatnot. So considering we've already set up context 7 last week, let's just go with that. Right? We might include the rest, but let's not go through the configuration of all of these now. For platform implementation, I would like to include the use of the relevant of the context 7 MCP server. to get the latest documentation. I would also like the developer agent to call upon the context 7 MCP server whenever it needs to write any new API or code related to any of the platforms we are using. Okay, so I mean, this should cover it, which is going to be fine. Okay, that is critical directive for the development process to ensure that this is captured as a core principle of development. I recommend we formally add it to the technical assumption section of the PRD. This will make it a formal requirement for the architecture and any developer agent involved. Here is the proposed update to technical assumption. Okay, technical assumption, was structure, yeah, monorepo, service, yeah, okay. Additional technical assumptions, so framework doesn't change, language doesn't change, back and database, yeah, all of that's still the same, UI, okay. So it has added basically this, so it's like, okay, primary documentation source. The context 7 MCP server must be used as the primary source for the latest documentation, coding standards for all integrated platforms. Yeah, Next.js, Superbase, yeah, great. Well, agent must consult the MCP server before writing any new API. Yeah, perfect. That's what we want. But okay, so I'm just checking our utilization. You can see that we've already reached 82% of our quota, but I hope we can finish this part at least without changing to a different platform. Okay, excellent. I've formally added the requirement. Okay, perfect. So let's proceed. So it's going to rewrite the epic definitions, which is fine. So it will include that as a part of the epics in general. And this will also trickle down to the documentation of the various tasks within the epics themselves. Okay, so excellent. Well, now. Composer. Okay. Yeah. Looks fine to me. We can, of course, always, like, as these get built, we will have to reevaluate them, look at them, at least, like, test it for ourselves. And then we can, of course, always update the tasks, change these, add more context if required, make new or add new requirements to every single task. So if we feel that the task is not really doing the thing that we wanted to do, we can also add the instructions for clarification, and these will also be documented as a part of the task. Excellent. We now have to validate all the required epics and stories. Before we proceed to the technical, to the final quality checks, I need to complete everything we've discussed into a complete PRD. Okay. Is it okay? Yes. please proceed with creating the PRD. All right. Very good. Very good. So just while it's writing all of that and working on finalizing the PRD, I do want to emphasize why it's important to utilize this method of creating your app, right? Because as we kind of have been seeing a lot of people, talking about um, like vibe coding and just, going to the online the online development environments that we've seen, of course, during one of our episodes, and just give it a prompt with like the app that you want and the functionality that it needs and whatnot. You can do that here as well, right? But at the end of the day, you will run into a lot of problems when you have to change the way that your application works. Because again, this was done in one shot. You haven't really properly documented everything or anything about your app in general, which makes it problematic to change in a structured fashion. So if we do it in this way, and it doesn't have to be as elaborate, right? You can take a simpler approach. You can just take a couple of these agents and just put them in your configuration and just run with these and like not do all of the steps, which is perfectly fine, right? If you're building a relatively small app. But the documentation that these agents create are very important because let's say we complete our app, right? But there are still functionalities that we want to add. You have all of the context, right? So you have the definition of your application. You have all of the tasks that were completed. So you don't have to reiterate to AI continuously about my app is this, it does that, this page links to this, and this is how my payment works, and this is how my database work. It already has all of this, so you can just refer to one of these documents or multiple of them, and just tell it, okay, now I want to add this functionality, create, documentation in order for this to be added, create the epics that are needed and whatnot. And it will continue in the same line of work while having all of the context regarding what has already been built and established for your application, right? So this makes it very important to continue building your app over time versus just building it with like random like prompts here and there. And even if you end up with a product or like an app that is somewhat functional, at some point AI will start to break it because it will assume things because you haven't told it exactly everything, and this can be very very problematic later on. Okay. Fine. So it has created the PRD for us, which is wonderful. Okay. The PRD isn't particularly long. I did expect it to be bigger, to be very honest, but if it works, it works. So we're going to keep it. And it says, okay, as per my process, I will now perform a final quality check by running through my standard product management checklist. That's fine. So first, I need to review the checklist, which it did. As per my process, the next step is to run the quality assurance check. Fine. How would you like to proceed with the checklist review? Interactive mode. We can go through the checklist section by section. I'll review the section of the PRD. Okay, so I'm going to go with 2. I don't need to go through the checklist one by one because we've already spent a lot of time telling it what we needed to do and how it needs to do that. So I believe that it has documented all of that quite well. I'll let it do its thing and run everything kind of by itself, and then it will present a report at the end, which will also save us a bit of time than having to go through each and every step, but also it will hopefully help us to finish this within our like free use guidelines or limits here, because it will only take 1 request hopefully instead of 10 possibly. So okay, excellent choice. I'll now perform the comprehensive analysis. Great. Okay, the review is complete. Okay, that was very quick. The PRD is in excellent shape. It's clear, well structured, and provides a solid foundation for development. The analysis identifies a few minor gaps, which is normal and healthy part of the process. I have compiled the findings into a report. I will now append this checklist result and next steps section to the PRD. Okay. So the PRD is green, so that means that it has been updated with something, but has it? I don't see it. No, this is everything that was already there. So I will now append this checklist result report and the next step section to the PRD. This will finalize it. Okay, so it didn't actually. Did we run out of? No, we still have. Okay, so it says please confirm. Okay, yeah. Please proceed. So I needed to confirm that I'm happy with that, which is fine. I mean, it could have already done that, but it's fine. It is just fine. Okay, so as you can see, it's running through the entire PRD again. It's like reading it and checking its assumptions. And this is quite comprehensive, to be honest. So it has provided a complete checklist. Okay, completed. So there are a couple of things that have a minor warning. So it says, okay, so the UX refinement. So it's well defined, provide excellent guidelines and principles. However, there are no wireframes, which is correct, or markups yet. This is the expected next step for the UX specialist. Yeah, indeed. So we haven't really gotten to that point because there is a UX specialist, so user experience designer basically. Technical, however, the detailed data model. Yeah, okay. So this is also to come, right? So the things that it's complaining about are things that are like the following steps, right? I mean, let me put it this way. So for the UX requirements, we could have already provided if we had, for example, a couple of screenshots, or we already created a design document, for example, that we wanted to give it. We could have already provided these, which is fine. At the moment, we haven't because we haven't really reached that stage yet, but we will. And the architecture document, so we will have an architect after this one that will basically set up everything that is missing. So there is indeed no data model, there is no schema. We haven't yet set up the structure of our application as a whole, which will be done by the architect based on the choices that we have made. So these things are perfectly fine. So this is normal. Dependencies, it says there is no like any dependency that is problematic at the moment. Conclusion, yeah, that's fine. Next steps of handoff. So it tells us, okay, the document is now ready for the handoff to the design and architecture. Exactly. Below our technical prompts. So the good thing is here that it will also give you the prompt based on everything that we have already done that you need to give to the UX expert, right? So it will, this is the prompt. So it will also say, it will tell you, okay, to begin designing, use this prompt, right? Activate the user expert, ask it to create the low fidelity wireframes for the humble words MVP. It will tell it to review the brief and the PRD. So all of this is done, is there by default. Okay, paying close attention to the user stories in Epic, Epic 1 and Epic 2. So it refers it to the Epic documentation, which is great. Based on these requirements, wireframe to follow the key screen. So it will tell it all of the screens that our application needs. Again, great context. Focus on a clean, intuitive, and mobile-first design, right? And then we have the same for the architect. So we will prompt the UX designer to create this first. And then after that, we will have the architect do the same for our application. So not the UI part and the UX part, but the actual application with the same things. So it tells it again, like, this is what we need, read these documents, what is required for you to do your job, define all of this. For the table, you need to have all of these tables, for example, which is really, really great. Okay, good. Sounds good to me. So it's now saying, okay, I'm done. These are the final steps in this persona. That's fine. So it's been a pleasure working with you. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, so it says, okay, would you like to proceed with exiting the PM persona? That's fine. I mean, we don't have to tell it that. We don't need to use our tokens for like these kind of replies, because at this point we have everything that we need for the next step, right? We can just click start a new chat, so it will like clear up this chat and clear the context window, and we can continue with the next one. We barely have any tokens left, but that's fine. Let's use these. So I'm gonna create a new chat. Again, like this empties the context window, so we are not keeping all of the old information in there and possibly creating bottlenecks for our AI. So we're going to take this. So I'm gonna take this entire part and paste it in here. And before doing that, I will go to the UX expert and paste all of this in. I will keep on using Gemini 2.5 Pro for the moment. That's fine. I mean, I have no idea whether it is good at design at all, to be honest, but we'll leave it at that. And let me be very clear. I'm just like letting it do its thing. I could take screenshots of the internet, for example, of an app that I think I like, or I can just go to any social media app and like see if there is anything particular that I want. I could also tell it if there is like a very specific color or like a set of colors that I want to use in my app. But for now, I'm just going to let it design something for me and see what it comes up with. And again, we could always change this later if we really want, right? So yeah, we're going to activate it. We're using UX Expert. Yeah, perfect. Go. And let's see how far we get. I hope that, yeah, I really hope that we don't have to stop in the middle of it doing its work, basically, and switch to something else. But let's see. We could always rerun this from scratch if we really wanted to. So, okay. So, hello, I'm Sally. Okay, great. You're UX expert. As per my activation protocol, here are the commands I can assist you with. So yeah, help, create front-end spec, generate UI prompt. Yeah, okay. So this is maybe something interesting that we can do. We'll do this in the next session though, because there are a couple of design tools that can generate some basic fundamentals for your app. I'll have to do a bit of prep work in order to show these off. Okay, so we can exit right away. Okay. I see you've already given me a task to create low fidelity wireframes for the Humble Dev MVP. This is great. Next step. Okay. I'll begin. Okay, so it has gone through the brief, and hopefully it has gone through. Okay, fine. So first I'll create the directory, which is great. So it's prompting us to allow it. So the agents can run commands in the command prompt or in the terminal. But it will always, you can set it to just do its own thing, but preferably you will want to have it ask you every time that it runs a command, because they might sometimes run commands that you really don't want it to, so that at least you can say that, okay, I'm going to skip this one. So yeah, I'm going to allow it to create this directory. So it's going to create a subdirectory here called wireframes to put in the wireframes that it will create. And then it's like, okay, yeah, it's kind of repeating itself. I have reviewed the brief and the PRD document, and I'm ready to create. Okay, great. I'm very happy that it's kind of doing this all without asking too many questions, because this will hopefully allow us to let it create what it needs to create without, you know, before maxing out all of our use. Okay, cool. So, okay, this wireframe might not look like much, but from a technical point of view, this is fine. So it just shows you that, okay, here will be the navigation, the profile of the user, how this will like look like just in terms of structure, which is fine, perfectly fine. Okay. So it has done that basically for every single page. So you can see here all of these different pages that it has defined. And this will help the AI later when it builds the pages to have a visual representation of what it should look like. Okay, it has created these all places, the new wireframes. Yeah, that's fine. So it has created all of these. The next, these text-based wireframes are a great starting point for us to align on the core layout and user flow. Please take a look and let me know your thoughts. I'm ready for your feedback and to discuss the next steps. Yeah, that is, I mean, okay. This is the discovery page. Okay, so it's showing here like available spaces where you can see more. We have the sign up flow. So this is a screen where people can sign up, email address, password, login, and then a button to actually sign up or click to have their password. For me, I would like to add. I mean, I would expect there to be two password fields. So if someone is signing up for the first time, they fill in their email address, a name, and the password twice is, I think, the minimum requirement. We have a main feed, which is fine. So these are just posts that people are going to see. User profile, so it will show an avatar, the username. If they have a bio, follow, unfollow, and their posts. Okay, fine. Discovery page, yes. And then space feed, yeah. So this is very similar to like a normal main feed, but this will be dedicated for like any specific feed that people are looking for, which is fine. So the only commentary that I really have is for the sign up regarding the sign. Actually, let me link it. Sign up. Is it .md? So 01 sign up login. Yeah, I would like to have the following added: name field, 2 password fields, to validate the password during the sign up phase. Okay, so Okay, yeah. So it has basically split it up in two views, which is great. To be honest, I prefer that. So there's a login and a sign up. So login is going to be very simple, just email, password, and login. And then when you're signing up, you will have your display name, you have your email address, you have password and confirm password, and then a button to create your account, which is just like more in line with what people should be doing nowadays in terms of like sign up flow. Of course, okay, fine, great. Okay, that is great. What is the next step? Okay, so I'll let it just create the UI prompt. And we can use these in one of the online. Okay. Okay, we just missed out. So it was okay. I'm gonna prepare this for you, and that was it. So we've like fully maxed out our quota here, um, and yeah, that's fine. So we can either upgrade or use something else to do that, but that's fine. So basically, it's okay, that's fine. So in order to, we can still do that. We don't need it to like have created this specifically because we can, uh, if we look at the PRD, right, which we already have, we already had this prompt, which is not great in terms of like actually uh, building design, but we can repurpose this. So we can do the following. So if we go to, let's go back to the web and let's go to, actually we will need to sign up somewhere. Okay, just give me 1 second. You can look at the VS Code for the moment. Just give me a moment. Okay, cool. So let's do the following. We're going to, hold on. So I'm gonna bring you back here. So I've gone to lovable.dev, where there are, of course, like a lot of interesting projects that people have built. Nothing that we'll take inspiration from though. So we're going to tell it to basically create the different pages of our app. We are looking to create a Twitter clone. All right. That has the following screens and USPs. Okay, so based on the requirements, Okay, so we'll have it create these screens. So I'm just gonna get rid of these very quickly. Okay. Sure. It can focus on clean and modern UI. What other information do we want to give it about our app? So let's give it the. Okay, so we don't want the handover. We basically want the. Okay. I just want to give it kind of the executive summary because that's really what we are looking for. Because this will give it kind of context regarding the app that we're trying to build. So hopefully it can take that into account, right? And then we're going to tell it this is our executive summary. And let it come up with something, right? And basically the idea here is to let it create the visuals for us so that we can provide these as context to our UX expert. And we can even copy some of these files, right? So we can like go into the code viewer and then copy the contents of the files, or like just download the files altogether. I normally don't. I've already covered this during the previous videos, but just to reiterate, I generally don't start the build of a project here because it has really very little added value. So I might create this kind of the visual of how it looks, and you can copy the CSS files or Tailwind files or even HTML files and like give them as context to your agent. But I don't want it to already create the app based on its technology stack, right? So it will use its like front end framework and back end framework and everything else. But I want my agent to build everything from scratch, right? So I don't want it to start building upon whatever Lovable or V0 or Bolt has created, because I just want to have the full control of building the app from scratch and knowing everything that is there, right? Everything that's built from the beginning. And I don't want anything to be left in there from whenever it was built here. Also, a technical reason for that is because I want to use the latest versions of all of the different pieces of software or like frameworks that we're using. And I don't know what versions they will be implementing here. This is for me another reason for not really wanting to build it here in general to start with. Okay. So it's like, okay, I'll create a premium Twitter clone. I don't know what premium is going to mean. I mean, Twitter itself is relatively basic in terms of interface, but okay. Let's see what it will come up with. Hopefully, it will not take a very long time. But we'll give it a couple of minutes. So it's writing already some documents, and again, it will mostly just do front end things now, right? So it will not really worry too much about the back end, at least not in its first iteration. So yeah, let's give it a couple of minutes and hopefully we'll get there. Now, there is an important topic that I do want to touch upon while it's building. We already, of course, spoke about the fact that whenever we're using um, software like we're building, right? We, of course, spoke about Node.js and how like it has a lot of frameworks and a lot of packages that we use that we install by using npm, and most of these packages are like free, so we don't pay for these. They just get installed automatically. Some of them are created by large companies, other ones by small companies, and others by just developers who wanted some kind of functionality that is built into a package, and they just created that and just published it online, and it's inside of npm and you can just download it and use it, right? Similar to basically the uh, the bmad method, right? So we used npx to run it, um, which is like just npm but then executing it. um, and unfortunately, um, because we rely on so many packages and we don't know the origin of these and whether they are secure and like fully up to date and whatnot, this could sometimes make it so that we will install or depend on dependencies that have security vulnerabilities, right? And unfortunately, in the past week, npm has been compromised a couple of times. Um, which is quite problematic, right? So there are uh, a number of packages. So the most recent one, which was on the 16th of September, where more than 180 packages on npm were basically compromised. That means that someone managed to inject some code into these packages, and if you have these packages as a part of your project and you just update it to that latest version, then you would have these the compromised code in your package, right? So you'll have it on your computer wherever you're running it. Most people who develop software, especially if you're doing this as a solo dev or like as a hobby or something like that, you are not really going to like utilize a different computer to just do development, for example, right? Um, this is where it might be worthwhile to look into virtualization to run a virtual machine on your computer for your development environment. Because if you're going to be running projects where you're going to be depending on many, many npm packages, of which you don't know the origin normally, right? So you're just going to install a package, for example, but this package might have 100 dependencies. So as soon as you start adding npm packages into your build, you're going to see the number of packages that are there in your package list are going to be, the list is going to be huge, right? And unless like you go through the effort of looking through all of the dependencies, whether they're good and whether they're secure and whether you should be using them to start with, you're just going to be relying on the fact that, most probably they're okay. And you're just going to continue with it. And that's how most people do it, to be honest. So there are two things that you need to do. So for me personally, before running any update, right, I will just look up whether there is currently anything uh, that is problematic within the npm packages, because this, like as soon as these kind of events happen, the companies have to make this publicly available. So they have to share it with people so that people are aware, so that you can at least look at the packages that are compromised and see whether you use any of them, right? And for that period of time, you would not upgrade. So you would just stay on the version that you are and just keep it like that. And then once it passes and once you know that all of the packages that were compromised are now clean and you're good to go, then you can like keep on like updating and upgrading your packages as normal. But also while you develop, instruct your AI to reduce the number of dependencies as much as possible. So use frameworks that have very few dependencies in general. And if there are dependencies that you don't use or don't require specifically in your project, for these dependencies to just get removed from your install. And this is something that you are going to have to be somewhat like deliberate with, because as you build your project, and especially if you're going to build a SaaS and you're going to publish this online, you might at some point also find out that, okay, a version of a package that you use might have a security issue, right? And then you would have to go in, update your build, test your build again to make sure that it's functional and everything is well with the new version, and then republish your app online so that it remains secure, so that your application at least has a much lower chance of getting hacked or compromised or something like that, right? Because this is also something that you will have to keep in mind if you're going to be developing apps and publishing these online. Okay. So it has completed its build, which is fine, I guess. Okay, so let's have a look. So it says, okay, this is our homepage. I mean, it looks fine. So we have chat messages. So none of these will be functional now because again, it just built out the front end, which is just fine for now. So okay, so we have posts. So here you have a field to create a post of your own. You can add a picture, a smiley, a date, a location, and click post. Looks good. So you can click here to load more. We have discovery where we have different topics. You have a search bar, which is great. You have here like, I guess, popular things where people, okay, so the filtering does work, which is great. So where people can filter, and you see that you can have like multiple spaces within the same kind of category, which is actually quite nice. I didn't even was thinking that deeply about it, but makes sense, right? So within technology, you can have all kinds of different variations of channels that people could subscribe to. It also shows how many people are subscribed, number of posts, trends. That's actually quite interesting. I like it. Discovery spaces, this seems to be the exact same thing for now. Then we have profile, so this is going to be the user profile. Okay, good. So we don't have a dedicated menu bar for the sign up yet. So we just have these pages. We don't have a dedicated page for login, but I'm guessing because that functionality just doesn't exist at the moment, which is just okay. But as like a general design language, I think this is fine. So what I'll do, I'll take some screenshots of these. You can also like here come and like view the code, and it will show you like the actual code. So the sources. For us, what we're going to be interested in the most will be like the tailwind configuration, and yeah, package not very important. Where's our, yeah, so we have our index.css. So this will have all of the, so these are variables for all of the different colors that are being used, which will make it very easy to change the color scheme on the fly if we want, and it will update everything else. So this is great that it has created all of that for us. And yeah, we can take some of these files and just give them as reference. So we can have the CSS file as well as the tailwind configuration, which is going to be good. And of course, a couple of screenshots, right, of the different pages, because this looks quite good to me. I mean, it looks just fine. We do want a dark theme as well. So for now, this is all just based on light theme. So I can also prompt it here to create, to like keep everything, but also create dedicated dark theme and to have a dark theme toggle somewhere in the interface so that users can change between the two. And in the final build, we will also have it device dependent. So we'll tell it to implement the functionality that will detect the current setting on the device that the user is using, if they have any like device settings for that. So if it's light, it will become light. If it's dark, it will become dark, and it will change accordingly. But then if if a user doesn't have this the preference on their device or setting that indicates it, we will then just choose one. by default, whether this is being light or dark. So this is great to provide to our AI model so that it can have at least this design language in mind. It's going to be like, okay, great, this looks fine. I want these. I want my interface to look like this, right? So yeah, um, we'll end it there for today. I will install Cursor for the next session and utilize its free use in order to continue with the app building because we concluded basically now with the UX expert, so we're moving on to the architect next. All right. So that will do it for today. Do share your experience in the Discord server. Leave a comment for the video as well if you like. And then we'll continue with the next session with our architecture document, as well as defining the tasks for our developer agent to get through it. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's session and that it has provided you with decent value. And we'll see you again during the next session. All right. Thank you very much for joining. Wishing you a great day and a great week ahead. And we'll see you again the next time. All right. Take care. Bye bye.